ざめたか17号。
おはようございます、ドクター・ゲロ様。
おお、私に挨拶を。
もちろんです。私の生みの親ですから。
For this series, much like my regular character deep dives, I want to mostly focus on lesser villains and take a look into what makes them tick. Starting off this series, as I feel it's fitting for Halloween, is the mad Frankenstein-like scientist himself, Dr. Gero.
Ohayou gozaimasu, Dr. Gero-sama.
'Not much is actually known about Dr. Gero, but we get our first kind of mention of him when Bulma arrives after they're chasing down Dr. Gero, and she realizes, hey, that guy looks like Dr. Gero. When she gets down there, she basically says, I think it's Dr. Gero. And of course, everybody there's like, what? Wait, what? She's like, for some reason, he turned himself into an android, probably to, live longer, she says. So they say, who is this guy? She says, I've only ever seen a picture of him before in a book, but he was a famous scientist who was also known for being quite a terrible person. So this is like all the information we need. He's basically a mad scientist is what he was known for in the world. Now, when we do learn more, of course, we understand that he's from, the Red Ribbon Army, all that stuff. And then when we get more of his backstory, that because Goku, defeated the Red Ribbon Army, all that stuff, that Dr. Gero became hellbent on revenge. We learn more of this, of course, when Cell reveals everything. But let's take a look into this. So what we understand here is that when Goku meets the Red Ribbon Army, they had robots everywhere. Okay, so ideally, this is the guy that was building the robots for the Red Ribbon Army. And when the Red Ribbon Army is taken out, it basically leaves the survivors to believe Goku had killed Red and Black. Let's not forget, nobody there saw what happened. We know as the audience that Black shoots Red. We know that because, Red had the actual insane goal for the Red Ribbon Army instead of the actual true goal they all believed, which was to take over the world. He just wanted to increase his height. And then Goku does, in fact, kill Black afterwards, which I would imagine many of them from the ground saw the explosion in the air. So a lot of them believe that Goku must have killed Red and killed Black and therefore took down the entire Red Ribbon Army. He destroys the entire complex after that. Most of the people who worked under the Red Ribbon Army, I think I might have mentioned this in my villains video, but basically were just lackeys. They were just henchmen. They didn't believe in the cause. They didn't care about the cause. A lot of them were just there for the paycheck probably, They were just a bunch of punks they found to come join them. Come join our organization. We'll pay you, etc. But Dr. Gero instead is somebody who seemed to be devoted to the cause, much like Black was, which is why he wants revenge against Goku for ruining everything. But another reason why he probably wanted revenge was, think about it. He was known as a mad scientist in the world. And here comes this bad organization that basically says, hey, we'll fund your research. You want to do crazy experiments? Build us stuff. Build us stuff that helps us take over the world, and then we'll give you all the access to everything you need. This is a dream come true for Dr. Gero. He could do his crazy experiments, try to make the perfect beings, which is what he was trying to do. And when that's all taken away from him, he wants nothing more than to kill the person responsible for that. And he devotes the rest of his life to that. It's pretty insane, to be honest. after going into hiding, he basically devotes his life to trying to create the ultimate beings that could do two things: get revenge on Goku, and then take over the world, which is to carry out the Red Ribbon Army's goal. Those were his only ambitions in life, to make the Red Ribbon Army, come to fruition again, but also to take care of the person who stopped them the first time. He creates 17 and 18. Now, in Trunks' timeline, this is the what if there was no time travel. This is what would have happened in Goku's timeline as well. If Trunks had never gone back to the past, Gero would have activated 17 and 18. They would have killed him, and Goku would have died of the heart disease, leaving their programming kind of messed up because their main target was no longer there. So they move on to the second target, which is to take over the world. But then we get this weird reveal where Trunks says to them in the Trunks special, he's like, why are you doing this? And then 18's like, we hate humans. And it's kind of like, you have to kind of take a stop there and you go, wait, but they're part human themselves. For those who don't remember, 17 and 18 were once human. They were experimented on and turned into androids, from their original human parts. Why would they hate humans? I actually have a great theory on this that I was going to mention in that Trunks video, but I saved for here. And here's how I feel this all went down, because we know that when Trunks travels time, things change somehow, but they're not sure. I personally think in the future where Trunks is from, Dr. Gero erased their memories. They don't know who they were. They don't know they were human. They maybe think they're androids, but they have lingering humanity in them. 18's still obsessed with fashion for some reason. 17 likes to have fun driving cars around, killing people, but like there are these parts of them that still have humanity somewhere deep inside. And the only thing they remember is being experimented on, probably tortured, turned on and off, which is, basically we learned that in the regular story as well. They were turned on and off many times because they weren't cooperating with him, so he kept shutting them down, and they got eventually tired of that. So from their point of view, humans were just these monsters like Dr. Gero, who just experimented on them and used them like tools. Therefore, they looked down on humanity. Let's look now at the sacred timeline, the timeline from the manga, the Goku's timeline, I guess the better way to say it. In that timeline, they still show humanity in them. We know they know they're human because they mention it later that we're twins and that we're human base, they say. They actually say that many times. They know they were once humans. They don't have an ill feeling towards all of humanity. They don't. And why? So my thinking is that in this timeline, Dr. Gero turned himself into an android. Okay. It seems that somewhere something changed where Dr. Gero decided to put their, erasing their memory, maybe putting that on hold, and instead focusing on making himself a 19 instead. And therefore never finished erasing their memories. He had them shut off for a long time, apparently. And then when he turns them back on, they were as they were. Which is why they're not evil. They're not at all. Honestly, 17 and 18 were good, for the most part, good people, which is what 16 actually says. He's like, you guys didn't go around killing people. He's like, I like that about you guys. 16 mentions that about them. So I do think this is kind of it's my take. So, if you don't agree with me, that's fine. But basically, it's how I feel what the main difference is between the two timelines, why 17 and 18 are so different. Why we're mentioning this here is because it shows the cruelty of Dr. Gero. They were human beings that he was experimenting on. He is apparently known for experimenting on human beings in order to create the perfect being. So he is a terrible person.
That's 例によって世界征服が目的か？
よくはわかりませんが、少なくともドクター・ゲロの狙いはそうだったと思います。しかし、究極の殺人マシンとして作られたその人造人間たちは
So in the main timeline, we all know Trunks travels back in time and warns Goku. 3 years later, they go out to confront the androids, but instead are met with androids 19 and 20. They don't, unbeknownst to them, these are not the terrifying androids that Trunks warned them about. But rather, this is Dr. Gero himself in an android body, and 19, who is pure robot. They do not have unlimited energy. Instead, they can absorb energy through their little devices on their palms. This does two things. It, of course, helps energize them, but it also makes them stronger every time they do it. They are literally just powering themselves up by doing it. When the newly transformed Super Saiyan Vegeta and even Piccolo prove to be too much for them, he retreats and has no choice but to activate 17 and 18. This hesitation makes me feel like it's probably the same in all timelines, 3 timelines, for those who don't realize it. You have Goku's timeline, the main timeline, Trunks' timeline, and then you have the movie. You have the movie where the 3 androids, Super Android 13 and all that stuff, which is not canon. Therefore, it's like another alternate timeline, which I think most of the movies probably are their own timeline. But anyway, in each of those timelines, poor Dr. Gero suffers the same fate. This is something that's technically forecast a long time ago, all the way back in the OG series, Android 8, okay? Android 8 was an android that had free will, was able to think for himself, and chose willingly to not want to hurt people and be a good person, and therefore joined Goku and helped Goku take down the Red Ribbon Army, the Ice Muscle Tower anyway. But the point is that's the first sign that Dr. Gero, maybe he wasn't the best at creating these AI, I guess you could say, that were constantly thinking for themselves. 17, 18 had that issue. They were thinking for themselves. 16 had the same issue where he was like, I don't want to hurt people. They kept thinking for themselves. This is something that would then continue when we finally meet Cell.
その昔、ドクター・ゲロは戦闘の達人たちの細胞を集め、その細胞を合成させた人造人間の研究を始めたが、時間がかかりすぎるために途中で断念した。しかしコンピューターはその作業をそのまま続けていた。
Where things get interesting is when we learn that 17 and 18 were not his ultimate creations, but rather they were just 2 more pieces in his true creation, Cell, the perfect being. Composed of the cells of some of the universe's most powerful beings, the ability to have unlimited potential and to be nearly indestructible, Cell would be Dr. Gero's magnum opus. Though, as we just talked about with his track record, Cell too would ignore his programming and basically just wanted to constantly improve himself, and that's all he would care about. His individuality would, of course, ironically, be his own downfall.
まだ子供だった頃、レッドリボン軍の影響を受けた祖父のことを両親は嫌っていたからね。
In the Dragon Ball Super movie Super Hero, we meet Dr. Hedo, the grandson of Dr. Gero. He claims that his parents, which included the youngest son of Dr. Gero, distanced themselves from Dr. Gero because they claimed the Red Ribbon Army had corrupted him. I'm calling bullshit on that. We basically had the understanding that Dr. Gero was known in the world as a mad scientist. Therefore, I really don't think the Red Ribbon Army would be the cause of that. It seems like he was already known for that. And most likely, if he was a mad scientist experimenting on people, creating robots, the Red Ribbon Army would come knocking at his door saying, hey, I'm sure you're not getting grants from any big organizations, since you're a crazy scientist. We'll pay and fund for everything, you need. Just come work for us, as I said earlier. Therefore, this organization is allowing his dreams to come true. That's all taken away from him. He's now going to devote the rest of his life to vengeance, but he still wants to create the ultimate being, but the ultimate being that can also additionally take out Goku.
これだけ言ってもわからんのか。出張すんじゃない。17号貴様何よ。私は貴様を作った。おのれガラクタどもが。
なんてやつだ。てめえを作った親を。
I hope you enjoyed the first in the Villains Deep Dive series. If you have any suggestions for villains that deserve a closer look, drop it in the comments below. The next video will be a story spotlight for Halloween. Hint, hint. As always, like, subscribe, and share, and see you soon.